All right, so we're going to go into the second one, but before we do that, let's try this again. All right, so we're going to go into the second one, but before we do that, let's try this again, which I really wanted to show. Hello. How many of you been to New Zealand? Yeah. So that the guy who's running there was Ricky Gates, one of the mountain runners or ultra runners. That's in a place called Kepler down in South Island, New Zealand, and we have this race down there. It's a 67-kilometer walking track, which you do typically over 2 or 3 days. And there's a mountain race called the Kepler Challenge that happens in December. So it's a very beautiful part of New Zealand. So if you've ever seen the Lord of the Rings movies, all of that was filmed over there. So when you run up that, you go up to the kind of the ridge, and then you run along the ridge, and you come down again. It's beautiful scenery. So I'll share that with you because we are both from New Zealand. I'm Chan, Ari. So we did the first session was about kind of understanding upgrade and what happened when you do a content database upgrade. So intros, I'm Chan. Obviously, you talk to you guys from New Zealand. So Ari, talk about yourself.
I'm Ari, yep, working here in the UK. I've been over here about 3.5 years. Been working with SharePoint for over 7 years, starting with Chan in New Zealand about 7 years ago. I'm on Twitter, there's details there, and I also have a SharePoint-focused blog with details up there as well.
Cool. So kind of the agenda, and we'll just do a quick recap for those of you who were not here, which obviously everybody was here. So we're going to do a bit of a kind of the process recap of what we did to get our content database upgraded. And then Ari's going to talk about site collection upgrade, yep, and customisations, and I'll talk about a little bit about the service apps. So for those of you who are here, what's happening? Sorry. Just trying to get to the demo machine to show that the where we were. So there you go. Thank you. Cool. So at the end of the first session, we ran the upgrade, and this is the screen that you get once the site collections have been upgraded. So I just wanted to kind of show you that point that we stopped at, and the process we talked about. So do you want to kind of take it from here, Ari? And back again. No.
On the left.
Which one is, so we're going to switch to that one, sorry.
Okay, yeah. Should we switch this one first?
Cool.
Right. So just to recap on the overall process for a 2013 upgrade. First stage is to install the binaries on the new hardware to create a new SharePoint Farm configuration database. Second stage is to copy all the databases for all service applications and content databases that you want on the new system across to the new farm. Thirdly, upgrade the service applications. This needs to happen before the content is upgraded, so you have things like managed metadata service ready to go so that content can use those services. Next stage is to upgrade the content database schema. Note at this point you're not actually upgrading the site collections. That's in the fifth and final stage, which we'll delve into today. That can be done either by farm administrators or by site owners themselves. So deferred site collection upgrade replaces visual upgrade, which is the technique Microsoft used to allow you to have 2007 mode sites in 2010. Deferred site collection upgrade is basically the process of upgrading the content within the site collection itself. So you've upgraded the content database, but each of the sites continue to work in 2010 mode. It looks like a 2010 site running in SharePoint 2013. And site collection administrators or farm administrators can select when to upgrade the content within that site. It does this by having a complete copy of all the SharePoint 2010 files in SharePoint 2013. So everything should continue to work as it did in SharePoint 2010. So as I said before, they sit in 2010 mode, and you need to go in and explicitly upgrade those either on an individual basis or all at once. One new feature Microsoft has built into the product is health checks that can be run by site administrators. There's a whole bunch of rules. These are also extensible if you want to write in your own. Checks for known issues such as missing site templates. So these will prevent upgrade from working. These are available to site administrators via the UI. If you do an upgrade, it's going to run these checks first and prevent the upgrade from working if specific rules aren't met. This is something Chan showed briefly in the previous session. Upgrade evaluation site collections, another new feature that supports upgrade. This basically allows users to create a copy of a site collection. There's some additional timer jobs that work behind the scenes to make this happen. So when you go and request an evaluation site, it goes into a queue. There's a timer job that by default runs at 1 a.m. every morning, and it will create these evaluation site collections. It's important to note this is just another copy of that site, so you may get issues with that, such as duplicate search results. Alerts are still active on those sites, so you need to be careful if you are using this feature that it is live, so use with caution. Yes, site collection administrators can trigger that. That's configurable, so you can turn it off if it's not something you want to use. The way it makes a copy of the site collection is when this timer job runs, if the SQL Server version supports it, we'll take a snapshot of the content database, and this allows it to make a copy of the site collection without affecting the original site collection at all. This is a feature, the SQL Snapshot feature is available in SQL Server Enterprise editions, but you also need to have that turned on. It's important to note because if you don't have that feature, the site collection will be read-only during that copy, so the original site will be affected if you don't have SQL Snapshot capabilities turned on. And there's also a notification that goes out to the site collection administrator when this evaluation site has been created, so they can go through and start to test whether the upgrade has worked. Another new feature to support upgrade is the system notification. This is a bar that appears at the very top of pages. In the case of upgrade, this is going to show site collection administrators that the site is ready for upgrade. This is different from the notification system that was introduced in 2010 that appears below the ribbon. This is a kind of a system-wide feature that's not customable by end users. And it's also going to show upgrade status, so if the site is in the process of being upgraded, it's going to appear there. It also shows when the site's content database is set to read-only, so users know that they cannot make changes on that site. And just briefly, here's an example. So you can see the top of the page, big red bar, indicating at the top that the site collection is ready to upgrade, or the site's in read-only mode at the bottom there.
Is that message, the read-only message, always that message when you choose?
No, it's this isn't a configurable thing. Yeah. Yes.
Available in multiple languages or only English?
I imagine it would be part of the language. Yeah. Yes. The top bar is just for site collection administrators. The bottom one, when the site's being upgraded or in read-only mode, everyone will see.
One more question regarding triggering the creation of property sites.
Sure.
The last bullet was that requester and site collection admin are informed. So who else would be the requester if it's not site collection admin? And can this be blocked because site collection admins will start to create copies that will be processed overnight on the server without knowledge of that actually that they can view the client stuff?
Sure. Okay. So a couple of questions. Who could the requester be apart from the site collection administrator? I guess this could be one of the farm administrators who've requested that site collection. And the second one is it possible to block this feature? And yes, you can turn that off, certainly. Another change to do with the upgrade is into the logs. Logs are not only stored on the file system in SharePoint 2013 upgrades, these are also stored in the site collection. So site collection administrators can have a look at that, or probably more typical, if a site collection administrator has upgraded their site, there has been issues, you get a call, you can go to that site collection, have a look in the maintenance logs library, and have a look at a report of that log. So I'll just quickly show you what that looks like. Jump over to the VM. So here's a site collection that's been upgraded. You should be able to see in the URL, the maintenance logs is in this catalogs folder. So _catalogs, maintenance logs, and you'll see a couple of text files that relate to the upgrade. So you can go in and have a look if there are any problems with that site collection upgrade without necessarily having to look in the file system. And that's visible to site collection administrators only. Now, because site collection administrators potentially have the option of triggering upgrades by themselves, Microsoft wanted to make sure that this wouldn't bring down the farm, so they've introduced a whole bunch of throttles. These throttles work at various levels, so there's an application pool throttle, which will prevent more than 5 site collections per application being upgraded at the same time. It's also settings at the content database level, and these are all configurable settings that you can change based on the hardware that you're using or the size of your content databases. The other throttle that is there by default prevents users, site collection administrators, upgrading their own site collection if that site collection is more than 10 megabytes or has more than 10 subsites. So this is a fairly low limit. This is, again, something that is configurable. If you want to, for your environment, you can increase that setting, but be sure to test and monitor that as it goes through, because you obviously don't want hundreds of site collections being upgraded at once if they're a large size. If those throttles are breached, basically each site collection upgrade is queued and processed once the other ones have moved off the queue. And there's a time job that runs every minute to have a look at site collection requests that are pending, and we'll go through and process those. So we talked about SharePoint 2013 having a full copy of the SharePoint 2010 files. This allows the sites to work in either 2010 mode or in 2013 mode. This means all the JavaScript, CSS files, all the control templates, everything sits there on the file system and can be used by these 2010 mode sites, giving the customizations a much better chance of working. 2010 solutions or WSP packages can be deployed either in 2010 mode or in 2013 mode. So if your customizations aren't particularly complex, you can deploy those to both the 2010 and the 2013 directories. Things may still work. Obviously test that first. But 2013 solutions can only be deployed to 2013 mode sites. They don't go backwards. And this is a bit of a diagram of how that works behind the scenes. So you can see here, we've got a 2010 mode page, and down the left-hand side, you can see that's using the layouts files and the site templates sitting on the file system in that 14 directory, which is used for SharePoint 2010. And on the right, we have the 15 directory templates and site definitions being used. One thing that's important to note is that any code running in 2010 mode is not actually using the 2010 versions of the SharePoint assemblies. There's a redirect policy in the web application config file, which will redirect all those assembly references to use the 2013 assemblies. So it is actually going through 2010 code. So you're relying on Microsoft having made things backwards compatible. So there is a risk that things may break because that is actually running SharePoint 2013 assemblies behind the scenes. Obviously, Microsoft's made every effort to make sure those things do still work. So by default, everything's in 2010 mode when you upgrade your content database. It is possible to upgrade all the site collections to 2013 mode if you like. And this is something that's worth considering if it's absolutely critical for all those sites to work in 2013 mode on day one. If you're going to do that, obviously test that first. I imagine there'd be quite a long testing cycle to make sure those sites work, but there's a PowerShell script there that will go through and upgrade those sites from 2010 mode to 2013. For each web application, site collections can be created in either 2010 mode or in 2013 mode based on setting on that web application. This is always available to farm administrators. And again, if you have configured it, then the site collection administrators can go through and upgrade those sites. And the setting that controls whether sites can be created in 2010 mode or 2013 mode is this compatibility range. And there's basically 3 values that this can have. It can have old versions, so sites can only be created in 2010 mode. All versions means you can create site collections in 2010 or 2013 mode, or new versions. And I'll just show you quickly how that looks. So in central administration, if we jump into create site collections and have a look here, we have a template selection. And so this is a web application that's been, or contains a content database that's come from 2010. And I can continue to create sites in either version. So this is something you probably want to turn off if you're encouraging people to use the new version of the system. So there's a lot of features that are not supported in 2010. Web analytics and Office web applications are some of the big ones. There's been fundamental changes behind the scenes on how those work. Web analytics, the current feature set's been deprecated, that's no longer used. and kind of rewritten using a lot of the new search technology. Office web applications run on a separate server now, so those features will not work in 2010, even in 2010 mode sites, alongside some of the project web access templates. Talk a little bit about upgrading custom solutions or WSPs and branding artifacts. Before upgrading these types of solutions, I think it's worth having a bit of a think about whether those customizations continue to make sense in the new version of the system. If you've created features that maybe use search or social or areas where Microsoft's made big enhancements, these features might not make sense to upgrade. You might be able to get away with some of the out-of-the-box features in SharePoint 2013, which will save you a lot of time rewriting those customizations. So do an audit first of the features and have a look and see if either Microsoft or third parties have built components that replace those, and the customization may not need to be upgraded if there's a suitable replacement. You might want to have a look at some of the new techniques in 2013. This might be a good time to refactor some of these. And you can also have a look at maybe the app model. Maybe that makes sense in some situations. So there's a lot of new features there. Basically, have a look and see if they can be used rather than having to rewrite them. So to extract the solutions that are running in a 2010 farm, there's a bit of PowerShell there that will ensure that you have the version that was deployed to the 2010 site, although hopefully you have everything in source control so you can go and generate those packages again, but that's one way of doing it. It's important to deploy those solutions before upgrading the content database. You need those site templates, those controls and web parts to be there before the upgrade takes place. When you're installing these solution packages, you can target 2010 mode or 2013 mode sites using the compatibility level. This will override the setting inside the solution which will target it to a specific version. So there's two places you can do that as a farm administrator. If you have an old solution that you want to be supported in 2010 and 2013 mode, I use this install SP solution command with a compatibility level set to both 14 and 15. Now, in theory, Microsoft says your customizations, even built in 2010, should work in 2013. But I would say test that first. I know I've seen issues, especially around search. There's been some fairly fundamental changes there. So if you're using things like the keyword query class, that's not supported in 2013, and you may run into issues around that. Also around the client-side object model. I know Wictor's got a post. There are certain situations where those customizations will not work in 2013. So in general, things should upgrade, but as always, make sure you test before you push this out. Question?
Deploy our customizations with a compatibility level for both versions, and then we'll find out that it works okay for 15 mode, and we'll make site collection upgrade to new mode, and it's also okay. Can we uninstall certain customization or only from compatibility level 14? Make environment kind of cleaner or stuff like that.
So the question is, if your sites will work fine in 2013 mode with your customizations, can we uninstall it? The answer is yes, you can use the uninstall SP solution command and then install it using the 15 mode switch if you wanted to keep the environment clean. Yes?
Have the same name of solution in 14 and 15 mode, different solutions. How do they look in their solutions package?
Sorry, what was the question again?
Well, the question is, if you install one solution with the same name as another solution, one was targeted at 14 and the other was targeted at 15.
I don't believe that's possible to have a solution with two solutions with the same name. I think you'd need to use a switch and pass in both parameters if you want to have a single solution.
One solution that was targeted for both.
Yes.
The same name. Okay.
Yes.
The other thing is just an issue. A lot of code I see in
yeah, again, if your code targets classic mode, the general recommendation is to upgrade to claims first. And so at that point, you'd want to upgrade your code to work with claims. So if you do want to go and upgrade your 2010 code to work with 2013, the basic process is to take your Visual Studio project, make sure you're using Visual Studio 2012 with at least update 1. Update 2 is even better, that's out now. Update 1 will ensure that when you open your project in Visual Studio 2012, it'll upgrade all the assembly references to use the new SharePoint 15 assemblies. It'll also change project properties inside your project file to target the new version of SharePoint. Now this can be done manually if you're not using this version, but this just does it all behind the scenes. So if you can, use Visual Studio 2012 with update 1. The other thing you need to do is to change all references to the layouts folder, so your control templates. And there's also methods that will have changed. So in 2010, there was a utility method to get generic setup path that will return the old 14 directory where the old files are. So again, that should be updated to use the get versions generic setup path. And this is just a kind of high-level process. You'll need to obviously test that. Things may break and may need to be rewritten, but that really depends on how much customization you've made and which areas you've made those customizations in. So the question is, do the references need to be changed manually? Yes, so you need to go through your code and change those. Visual Studio is not replacing those for you. But obviously you could do a find and replace for some of those common paths to make sure you're using the new paths. Okay, over to you, Chan.
Oh yeah, so we talked briefly about the service application upgrade in the first part of the session. So the ones that you can upgrade, the user profile, and also if you're doing project server, there's the project databases that you can upgrade. So in 2013, if you are doing project server, this is the 4 databases that project server has gets merged into one. Secure store database obviously can be upgraded, social, search, admin, and manage metadata. So search, so if you want to get into understanding how search is upgraded, please come to the session after this one, which is been presented by Neil Hodgkinson. So make sure that you come to that session. There's no web analytics, it's required. It's using search, the new search features of search analytics. And the other service apps, basically you create new. When you create your farm, the basic core service apps will be created, and then you can bring the other other service databases across and upgrade them accordingly. So the high-level process for that, you need a service application pool, obviously, for each of your service apps. So if you're using a shared one, you can do that. Create or declare that existing pool, restore the database, and then create the proxy, which connects the database to the service app. So the steps involved, the commands involved, using PowerShell. You have to use PowerShell for this, obviously. So you have your application pool created, and then use the command. So for example, in this one, I'm using to create is the managed metadata service application. You pass in the app pool parameter and then say this is the application pool you want to use and the account, call SP services. And second step, reference the restored database for upgrade. Use the new SP metadata service application. Give it a name, application pool, and the database name. And then once that's done, you create the service application proxy, and then you should be able to get to the MMS or the management as a service or whatever service application you're upgrading. So once you've done that, you can then navigate through to your management as a service application, add your administrators and so forth, and check that everything's there. And then you can also see the term store, which will come across as part of your upgrade. And then the last thing you're going to do for MMS is to actually set the content type hub URI. So the hub URI is not a URL, it's I. So you set that after that, and then the identity of that. So that's pretty much the service app side. You got anything that you want to jump into the demo side of things? So what I'll show you is that we'll quickly go into a demo. In the previous session we talked about doing the upgrades, and we upgraded the content database, and then we started the process of actually upgrading site collection. So I'll just go through one site collection that we started upgrading and we found some problems. So we'll switch to the demo machine. We got the same issue in Ivy. There you go, cool. So what I've done is I've bought so in the background what I did was I kind of went in to upgrade this site collection here. So if you go to the content database that we bought across, just to show you a little bit more around some of the kind of the issues that you'll encounter. So should I click on that link before? Apologies. Pains of doing live demos. Okay, so this site, which says do not use, so has essentially it's got a bunch of lists and libraries, so we can kind of quite easily upgrade this site collection. So and this is where you can start off the process by going into the site actions area, site settings, and sometimes this doesn't render well. Site collection health checks, I'll start the checks, and it's just come back and said that there's some customized files in this site collection that will need to be fixed. So and the kind of the resolution there is to reset the page to default. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start this process by using the Powershell command. Pretty much going to go and force those site collections to be upgraded. And so while that's running, the UI doesn't change, obviously, and people can still keep on using it. It creates yeah, so it's running in the background while it's doing this stuff. So yeah, it'll carry on doing it. So back into the upgrade and migration, review database status. So again, it says that's being upgraded. System setting. Sorry, one thing that I did not do is bring my, there you go, there's the management as a service. Yeah, so I didn't do the upgrade itself, but I already had previously pulled that across. So yeah, like the service upgrades again depends on your size of your service applications you're using, and also what you're using as well. So all these configuration bits and pieces, if you got them documented, you can need to go and redo them again, or if you're doing the upgrade, they'll come across as part of the upgrade. But bear in mind, if you change the administrators or the URLs, or sorry, the settings that you need to configure, you'll need to bring them across and then do them manually. I always find that you test them a couple of times and it'll just work. So let's go and see how this is going. So it's showing, go back in here. So it's showing that the first top level site URL, which is the kind of the root site collection, got upgraded, but there's some errors, which I knew was going to be, and it's now doing the second site collection called BB, and that's carrying on through. It'll do some checks and carry on doing that. While it's doing that, any questions around what Ari was showing around the solution upgrade side of things, around customisations? Or any other questions? Yes?
Have you actually seen cases where you've upgraded from 10 customizations and they work?
Ari?
Yeah, certainly a lot of the customizations have worked. Some of the areas where I've noticed problems, if you've extended the search core results web part, I've seen that not work particularly well. If you've extended the content query web part, sometimes that hasn't come through. You need to change some of the properties there. But I have upgraded sites, and most of the functionalities has been there. Especially with these enhancements around the 2010 mode, the branding and the sites that I've upgraded has been largely unaffected. There's some odd little quirks, like you saw on the site settings page. Things are slightly out of place, but in general, things have worked, certainly.
So you can see that the other two site collections just upgraded without any errors, because they were pretty much standard ones. Only the top level one had errors. So you can go in and have a look at how the UI is changed, and you can actually do the functions as you'd. So if I go to the page and go in there now, you can see that it's been upgraded, and you can, go view all site content and do what you do. So you can see the UI has changed, and yeah. So that's essentially the site collection upgrade that you force as an administrator without giving the power to the end user. So yeah, like I said, when you do that, make sure that you kind of got your throttles and the size of your site collection and also sort of stuff. So the point is that when you do your planning, understand the sizes of those things. So when you give the power to the administrators or site collection administrators, that you know kind of threshold of when they should be doing it. So as part of your communications plan, you can give some recommendations to them and saying, well, your site collection size is this much, so therefore your recommendation is to make sure that you run that process in a weekend. So you can say, for example, but the person might go home at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. They can start that process, come back on Saturday afternoon or something, come and check that everything's been okay, and then work that way. So that kind of gives you that flexibility as well. Any questions? I know we are a bit early, so sorry.